Achewillow, Season 2, Chapter 6. I want to see Achewillow at night. There's no question that something is wrong with me. That I still live in Achewillow after 10 months of demon feeding, or that I constantly ignore good advice should be strong enough clues that my judgment isn't all there. In my defense, I've slept just about 20 minutes, and I'm pretty sure taking a nap in the shower doesn't count as proper rest. I followed that lack of judgment with a full 6-hour shift at the cafe, one during which I had to balance cooking and serving clients because someone didn't do all the necessary cooking last night. That someone is me. I chose to watch security footage and complain about my life to the raccoons instead. At least I had a good reason. When Agnes showed up to take the afternoon shift, I could have taken that opportunity to get some rest. The baking was all caught up on, and a better work-life balance is the exact reason why I have an employee in the first place. If this had been Olivia who took over the Achewillow, I'd have been asleep in Doris's bed, fully clothed, before my head even hit the pillow. Just thinking about it. The soft linen under my cheek and the old mattress supporting my abused body would have felt so good. Maybe that voice I sometimes hear when I'm at the very edge of slumber would have whispered sweet, calming things in my ear again. But no, what I do instead is stir up a laptop that's just as reluctant to be awake as I am, so I can spy on my employee. I could have done what Helen suggested and gone to see Michael at the hospital, but I saw myself in the mirror coming out of the shower and, well, I wouldn't have blamed the nurses if they decided to keep me there. This is why I delude myself into thinking that monitoring Agnes like this is the safest option. The screen is small and the resolution is what it is, which means I'm straining my already tired eyes. I stare, and I look for behaviors that could explain what happened to Michael or why my customers look so tired. But I feel like I'm watering the sauce, trying to make it thicker here. Is my life that repetitive when I work at the Achewillow? Everything seems so much livelier when I'm in the heat of action, taking orders, serving coffee, running to the stove to get some soup. For hours, I watch Agnes be bored at her job while I'm bored spying on her. As far as I can tell, she's not slipping anything into drinks or casting spells or mixing decaf with the normal coffee. Even if she were, am I in any condition to notice? Everything is blurry, and I can feel my back slipping on the headboard as I slump farther into a lying position, letting the mattress swallow me whole. I blink, and an hour slips by. The most exciting moment of the afternoon is when I see familiar faces. Gulliver shows up, and I sit bolt upright. What the hell is he still doing in town? Agnes, of course, and neither Olivia or I are there to keep an eye on him this time. Maybe I should run down and make sure he doesn't embarrass himself. My hand is already on top of the laptop, ready to slam it shut and run downstairs to interfere, when my better judgment pipes up. I've become a prisoner of my own dumb notion that Agnes is somehow causing my customers harm. This whole exercise is pointless. The cursor of my mouse hovers over the close button as I ready myself to close the window with all the camera views from the cafe. I resign myself to take that nap I've been dreaming about all afternoon when I notice the light in the Achewillow's dining room seems to brighten, and Agnes's mood visibly darkens. Her neck stretches and her back straightens. Hands at her side, which had been busy playing with the hem of her shirt, ball into fists, and she recoils half a step away from the register. Gulliver and every other patron, even those who were half asleep at their table, look up in unison at the subject of Agnes's sudden concern. Peter. He walks into frame as if he knew he was on camera. Then again, he's been the star and the Achewillow his stage ever since the first day he walked in. The customers are his audience. His presence radiates light and warmth, and I can see blurry, pixelated smiles appear all over the screen. Every camera angle captures someone who's glad to see Peter, and it's only after my face starts cramping up that I notice how I'm grinning too. Wilson should have had microphones installed, I whisper to myself, wishing I could hear what's being said. He looks so proud of his sister, beaming at her, his arms akimbo and his hands open with gladness. He only brings them together again in a slow but heartfelt applause. His lips move, but I can't read the words. My attention darts from one window to the next, following the cadence of a conversation I can't hear, trying to decipher it through the expressions of the participants. It plays like a little story. Peter's open joy at his sister's job is tarnished by a venomous reply on her part. He tries to bring it back, to inject mirth into their relationship again. I can see it in the weak smile and slight twist of his face while he keeps eye contact with her. The back and forth goes on until, against all odds, Agnes relents. And for the second time, I see her smile a little. Whatever Peter must have said, it cajoled some happiness into her. He buys something to eat. It looks like such a throwaway act that I'm not even sure he's doing it because he's hungry. He hands over a few bills. She gives him the last of the pistachio marzipan petit four. Then, just as he's about to leave, I take one final look at the camera, giving me the best angle on Agnes. Her lips move in a way that's too familiar not to recognize. I know those words in so many languages because they're so common. It's the first thing you learn when visiting another country after hello. Dankeschön, gracias, merci, thank you. So, the siblings made up. Agnes isn't stealing from my register, except to buy herself an unreasonable amount of cakes and sweet coffee. Clients seem to love her, and Peter said he wanted to see me again? Or something of that nature. I lie on my back, ancient laptop closed again at my side. I can almost hear it sigh and purr in relief after such a prolonged effort. The sun is so low on the horizon as to be completely hidden behind the rooftops of the shops and apartments across the street, leaving nothing but their black silhouettes cut out of a pink and purple sky. I know that if I twist my head, I'll see a fluffy cumulus hovering over town, dark violet on one side and a bright salmon on the other. I guess that's it. Everything at the Achewillow is as fine as fresh berries and cream. The only problem left is how to feed my hunger demon. If only I had the fruit of an Achewillow tree. And what about all my sick and tired customers? What about Michael? It's completely dark outside when the alarm on my phone wakes me. I hadn't set the damn thing for that purpose. It was just supposed to be a reminder to go check on how well Agnes had done closing up the cafe. A sneaky little evaluation of her work, just like spying on her. There's something dirty and paranoid about how I'm handling this. I didn't take any of these precautions with Olivia, but I've slept at the Figs' house. They trusted me in their home, so it seems fair to trust them with mine. Besides, I wouldn't even have the Achewillow Cafe if it wasn't for Olivia. The lights to the kitchen flicker on. It still feels somewhat strange to walk in here. It should be the most familiar part of the apartment. It's the only room that doesn't seem cluttered with photos, souvenirs, and knickknacks from Doris's life. The only sign of decoration is a small shelf next to the window above the sink. There's a pot of basil that was almost dead when I moved in, a few pictures of what I assume are family members, another old woman, a baby. There's also a candle in a small linen pouch, yellow with age and tied closed with some twine. I should put all this in a box. The marinade I take from the refrigerator is fragrant and spicy. When I get downstairs before I do my inspection, I'll add some chicken strips to sit overnight. In the morning, I'll cook them and wrap them in tortillas with some feta cheese, grilled pine nuts, and spinach leaves. This should make my lunch crowd happy. Down in the Achewillow Cafe, I turn on only the lights illuminating the kitchen and register area. Enough that I can see what I'm doing without having some stray pedestrian walk in, thinking we're open. I had that happen twice over the winter. Once a couple from out of town who were frozen and covered in wet sleet, and another time Patrick, who just happened to be walking by and figured he'd grab a warm drink. Both times I fired up the coffee machine. Both times I had to count my cash over. It's a pain in the ass. Speaking of cash, it's going to be hell sorting through Agnes's illicit purchases. I'll have to tell her that if she wants to use tips for food, at least make a note of what she's eating. The register springs open and, as expected, it's a mess. I didn't see her close up on the cameras, but I doubt she bothered to do the cash. Oh, good, I lament. I get to yell at an employee. Just what I've always wanted. I've counted registers 1,000 times before. I used to do it at the butcher shop I worked at. I did it when I was a barista. I've done it for 10 months here in Achewillow. It's a 10-minute job. Okay, maybe 15 considering the mess in that drawer. If I don't do it now, I'll have to do it tomorrow. And I have chicken wraps to put together in the morning. Whee! I mumble without joy before starting the tedious work. Halfway through, as I'm counting down the various denominations and just before I start adding up receipts, I notice something weird about a couple of American dollar bills. Words in black marker deface the money. Usually, the bank will still take money that's been written over, if the damage isn't too bad, but sometimes, if the bills are too hard to read or if the bank teller is in that kind of mood, they'll deny it, and I have to count that as a loss. The crude lines form elegant block letters. It's not quite calligraphy, but whoever wrote it did this with a lot of care and in a doit hand. You're forgiven. I put the bill aside and finish doing the register. The money stares at me for the duration, and when the time comes to put it in the bag for the bank, I pick it up again. That stupid piece of paper and I look at each other. George Washington, his thin lips and severe eyes, watch as I rub my thumb across the word forgiven. Who's forgiven? The question echoes between the overturned chairs of the Achewillow, bouncing off the front window and back into my ears. In lieu of an actual answer, I'm reminded of Peter's lips moving on my laptop monitor and of Agnes mouthing the words, "Thank you." You're forgiven. Thank you. Before I realize I've even made the decision, the door to the Achewillow closes behind, leaving me on the lamplit sidewalk of Rue Principale. Agnes's address, and presumably Peter's, I assume the two share a home, is somewhere on an email that I retrieve from my phone. This is stupid. If watching her through cameras was an abuse of her trust, going to Agnes's place is completely out of line. My path takes me down the street to what I've found to be the most permeable spot on the national divide that runs through town. The Achewillow Park is just as empty as one would expect in the middle of a warm summer night. That is to say, there's plenty of people loitering around. Teenagers sitting on benches or hiding in the shadow of trees for privacy, as well as the occasional person walking their dog. Achewillow Memorial Park is big, bigger even at night, and the darkness does to the strangeness of the city what a magnifying lens does to rays of sunlight. Or maybe it's my imagination. There's a man much taller than any man I've seen, so tall that for a moment I mistake him for a slender tree, but as he walks near the light, his stature seems to diminish back to something that could pass for normal. The sky is swarming with dozens of what look like drunken seagulls at first sight, but upon more careful observation reveal themselves to be albino bats. There's a lady pushing an old baby carriage that belongs in another century, but I don't dare look in to see what kind of child goes on a walk after midnight. In the middle of the park, there's the stump of an old tree. I've wondered many times if it might have been an Achewillow tree, but it's just an old oak that was cut down because it was sick. Tonight, for the first time, I notice a small branch sprouting from the middle of the old, dried-out stump. I love this park during the day, but loathe it at night. It's with a loud sigh of relief that I emerge onto Main Street on the United States side of Achewillow. Here, in the glow of halogen streetlights, there's no one to see me and wonder why the girl in jeans and striped yellow and white t-shirt is so relieved to be out from the shadows. Agnes's place should be just a few blocks down. At least, that's what the directions on my phone tell me. I really need to get to know this area more. I tend to get lost whenever I come to this side of town. There's something odd about it. I can't put my finger on what exactly, but the layout of the buildings, the way the streets are positioned, it all feels like a giant spiral or a snake eating its own tail. All while being so damn familiar. The building in which Agnes and Peter live is nothing like I've seen so far in Achewillow, at least not on the Canadian side of the border. It's taller than the other structures around it. I can count 10 floors, yet I don't remember seeing it from outside of town. From an architectural point of view, it's nothing remarkable. A blocky concrete tower reaching up to the clouds, with a row of metal balconies creeping up its sides. Crowning the whole thing is a forest of small parabolic antenna and satellite dishes. The shining jewel is a tall flagpole with a red light on top, warning any planes that might fly low enough to collide with the apartment complex. Not that I remember ever seeing a plane flying through the skies over Achewillow. Okay, Miriam, I whisper to myself, standing in front of the 2 glass doors separating me from the lobby of the complex. Now what? I don't expect any reply. In fact, the only thing I expect is to be discovered by one of the residents and told to get lost. Gooseflesh running up my arms, despite the warm night, serves as a stern reminder that I am no longer in my home country and that I'm not unknown to the cops here, and I certainly don't want to end up at the local station again. A breath of cold air rushes over me as I let myself into the lobby. The AC is running at full power and the place is glacial as a meat locker. Soft, easy-listening music floats above me from small, used-up speakers hung in the corner. Ceramic tiles beneath my feet make a grinding sound, having long been loosened from the glue and grout that held them in place. Gleaming, varnished wood paneling covers the walls that flank the door, with an enormous smoky mirror set into the one to the left, and an ancient intercom system with a framed list of names next to it, screwed to the right. Right there, next to the name Knowles, Apartment 18. My finger hovers over a chrome key with the number 1 engraved on it. I can hear the low hiss of a struggling speaker waiting to be used and then allowed to speak again. Now I look at the number 8. Push that and it'll call up to Agnes and Peter's home. At 2 a.m. Without prior notice or invitation. I look around the lobby and I see it in the corner above the intercom. A slim gray box with an objective an inch in diameter and a bulbous red light. I've been in enough old apartments while living in Montreal to know, or at least suspect, that they'll be able to see me on their television if I push that 8. What am I doing here? I ask aloud, lowering my hand from the keypad. I don't know, but whatever it is, you're doing it wrong. I believe that, for a moment, I must have died of fright and shock. If the voice hadn't been familiar, the damage could have been permanent. How embarrassing would it be to die of a heart attack before I'm 20? Mr. Fig? I whisper Henry's name like it's a dirty secret. He's standing in the lobby behind me, wearing his usual shirt and overalls, but with a dark brown coat thrown on. Despite the lonely quiet of the room, the large mirror, and the other reflective surfaces, I didn't notice him walk in. I thought having lived in the big city had sharpened my senses and paranoia enough that I had more awareness than that. His hands are stuffed in his pockets, and he's wearing a sheepish look on his face. You'd swear he was the one who got caught in the act. What are you doing here? I ask, my eyes darting around, expecting to see Olivia waiting outside, or Agnes or Peter walking down the stairs inside the complex. Same thing you are, I expect. He pulls out a hand, used by years of hard work, and scratches at the side of his neck. I can hear the grinding of fingernails on his stubble mixed in with a terrible muzak. Maybe, I say without committing to anything. Maybe not. Either way, I'm going home. This was a bad idea. You want to know what she is. Henry steps in front of the glass doors before I can get by him. No, I want to ask her if she knows anything about why Michael Valencia passed out in front of my cafe. I step to the side, hoping Henry will let me through, but he matches my position. And for the first time since that first evening in Achewillow, the first time I saw him passed out in his favorite chair, I feel threatened by Olivia's husband. And don't you think she has something to do with it? Of course I think she has something to do with it. I've been spying on her all afternoon, and I dragged myself across town and across borders to figure out what that is. But that's my business, and no matter how irritating she can be, no matter her temper and attitude, she shouldn't be harassed for it. Not by Henry Figg. Not by me. No, I lie. Agnes is my employee. I thought she might have noticed something odd. I couldn't sleep, and I thought I'd take a walk and ended up here. Henry squints like he's trying to read some fine print on my forehead. I can tell he's not buying a single word of what I'm saying, but isn't up to calling me out on it. Well, I think she might have something to do with it. Henry steps aside, clearing the door for me. If I were you, I wouldn't be out alone at night, seeking strangers. I would have been fine. Peter's here too, I think. He wouldn't have let anything happen to me. We step into the night, and I shiver. The wind is picked up during the few short minutes in the lobby, but I doubt that's why I'm suddenly cold. The air is warmer outside, but the darkness chills me to the bone. Or is it Henry's ominous warning? Want to ride back? I look at him again. Under the glow of streetlight, he seems his normal self again. Still a curmudgeon and a grumpy old man, but no longer the threat that stood in my way only a moment ago. No thanks, I answer, stuffing my hands in my pockets. I'll walk. Every step on the way back to the cafe is plagued by half-heard noises and echoing murmurs. The sounds of my paranoid mind baiting my senses into agreement. It's the soundtrack to my own fears played on repeat as I give myself neck sprain looking over my shoulder. This time, I take the long way back, avoiding the dark park and the carnival of strangers that dwell there. Achewillow at night is a special place, one that doesn't fear its stranger side being exposed. I'm fascinated by the visions and people I've seen, but with Henry's warning fresh in my mind, it's something I might have to discover at a later date. Preferably when I'm no longer alone. The streets on the U.S. side of the border remain empty. The occasional spark of headlights crossing intersections can be seen in the distance, but otherwise I'm alone. Consumed by my own thoughts, bouncing back and forth between the mystery of Peter and Agnes and this strange, new, menacing facade of Henry Figg, I attempt to figure my way back to the border, to Rue Principale, and ultimately to my bed. Helen had mentioned that there was more to Olivia Figg than my friend lets on, and by extension, more to Henry himself. I agree with his dislike of Agnes, but his disdain was much more immediate. I'd probably get along fine with the girl if she wasn't such a brat to her brother, but Henry reacted like a dog smelling a cat, almost down to the growling. Old sleepy Henry following a young girl home, though. That seems a bridge too far. By the time I look up from the maelstrom of questions swirling in my brain like cake mix in a bowl, I discover a completely unfamiliar neighborhood. For a second, I'm not even sure this is Achewillow anymore. On either side of the streets are old single-family homes, each almost identical save for a few handful of superficial details. Even their color looks damn near the same under the orange glow of old street lamps. The street itself is larger than those closer to the border, with a narrow median separating the lanes on each side. Neatly parked in every driveway, there's a car. Each looks well-maintained, freshly cleaned, but old. They're the kind of large boats that used to prowl the highways when my mom was in her teens. Huge Buick sedans and long Pontiac station wagons with out-of-style colors and wood paneling. The large majority still have chrome hood ornaments. I can smell dew on the recently mowed lawns and the sound of dozens of sprinklers sing in harmony. What an idyllic place, if I were looking to film a period piece about the late 70s or early 80s. Have I gotten lost in Achewillow or in time itself? I contemplate turning around to retrace my steps. There's nothing to gain by venturing deeper into this chronological anomaly, and I've a better chance of finding a familiar landmark if I go back the way I came. But there's something hypnotic about this neighborhood, something inviting yet off-putting. It's an uncanny valley of design and architecture where homes and objects rebel against the threat of being forgotten. And teasing at my memory, near the corner of the next street, I see something familiar where nothing should be. Amongst the rows of convenient and family-friendly vehicles, all gleaming under fresh coats of wax, sits a battered old beige Impala. Not rusty or falling apart, but dusty and showing its age. A tired vehicle that could tell a million stories if it had but a voice. Detective Aaron Wilson's car, resting in the driveway of one of the many bungalows. There are no lights and there's no activity. The detective isn't on call. He's not busy with a late-night investigation. This is his home, or at least his home for the night. Exhausted, confused, but above all intrigued, I make my way to the front door. My finger touches the glowing, dull orange button of the doorbell. Surely the good detective is asleep right now. Surely he'll be pissed if I were to wake him up at this hour, but Wilson owes me and I'm lost and tired and can't ignore an opportunity if I see it, can I? Opportunity she does provide, I say, mocking Olivia's voice before pushing the button. A long, loud song that I can't place, played with terrible electronic bells, booms inside the house and through the door. I expect the porch lights on every house to come on as the entire neighborhood wakes up to the sound. Instead, it's a stomping noise accompanied by a growling and cursing that calls out from the front door. No lights are turned on, no bolts turned, just hinges letting out a quick squeak as the door opens. "Miriam Dufour?" Wilson asks, incredulous. "What are you doing here, kid?" I'm grateful that the good detective managed to find a robe before answering the door. I've seen Wilson exhausted before. Last fall, while he was chasing down a serial killer, he burnt the midnight oil on many a night trying to figure out his quarry. Tonight is little different, except for replacing the exasperation for irritation. "Sorry for waking you this late, detective," I explain, "but I got lost while walking and recognized your car. And figured I could give you a ride home." The irritation is still plain on his face, and he doesn't bother to do more than reach over for a pair of keys on a small table near the door before gesturing for me to get out of his way. He doesn't even question what someone my age might be doing across the border well past midnight. His knee-jerk reaction is to help first, ask questions later. "I'd settle for directions, actually, but if you insist, I'll gladly take the ride. Provided you take a minute to get dressed, maybe?" Wilson looks around over my head, monitoring the rest of his street, looking for something. "I'll give you a ride home. It's not safe to be walking around here alone at night." He gestures for me to walk into the parlor, but doesn't bother switching any lights on, leaving me in the dark while he disappears deeper into the unlit house. It's hard to tell, but the place looks roomy enough despite its outward appearance. The entrance is large and leads to an open living room and kitchen area, while on the other side there are doors, presumably leading to bedrooms, an office, etc. "Are there any places in Achewillow that are safe to walk around at night?" I ask, remembering Henry's similar warning. "No," Wilson replies between two grunts. I can hear him struggle to buckle a belt. "Except maybe the Achewillow Memorial Park, the one a block from your cafe. You know the one, right?" I do. I walked through it on the way, and it gave me the creeps. "So," the good detective says, emerging from the shadows, thankfully now wearing a pair of jeans and a button-up striped shirt. "Why are you on a walk this late and this far from home?" He follows me out, and I make my way to his car. At this point, I think I'm getting used to the old Impala. It's not my favorite vehicle in Achewillow, but considering our rocky start, I've grown more fond of, or at least accepting of, the ancient sedan. I have a few things on my mind, that's all. "Miriam, I'm a detective," he says. "I can tell you've got more than a few things on your mind." He leaves a pause there, not following up on his observation, but also refusing to unlock the doors to the car so we can get in. "Fine," I relent. "I have a new employee, and Michael Valencia collapsed outside the cafe yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago at this point. Did you hear about that?" Wilson nods. Of course he heard about it. Achewillow's not that big, and he would have kept his ear to the ground about anything strange happening downtown. "Right. Well, I'm wondering if there's any correlation between my barista and what happened to Mr. Valencia. Not to mention, everyone at the cafe looks so tired, and even I'm starting to lose track of time and forgetting things. By contrast, Detective Wilson seems alert and awake now, as if the tale of a mystery did as much to invigorate him as a fresh cup of coffee might. With his newfound energy, he seems to remember himself and the character he works so hard to project. Deliberately, almost in a rehearsed way, Wilson turns his upper body to better take advantage of the light, placing his face in the shadows like he's in a Fritz Lang film. He rubs the back of his neck while shaking his head slowly before locking eyes with me. He gives a half smile, which I can tell he's practiced in front of a mirror before. "Well," he says with his detective voice, "you know what I always say? You want to know what happened at a crime scene? Start with the victim." Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You have no idea how much it helps. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Visit ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate a cup. Questions? Comments? Email us at achewillow@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.